All right, real excited to have the next three gentlemen on this special edition of Sports Card Nation. Let me introduce them in no particular order. We got Ray from Philly, Ray Fonio, uh,
How
Bart
you going?
Bartholomew, and Scott Nathan. Welcome,
Hey,
gentlemen. Thanks for being on the show today. So, Ray, you
thanks, John.
started. You're welcome. You started the Baseball Card Hall of Fame. That was, you've done that a couple years. It's gotten a lot of momentum. I know when I had you on the show, just yourself, you mentioned about branching out and doing some of these other sports. Anytime you do one thing, someone else will be like, "Hey, what about football, basketball, hockey,
Hmm.
even non-sports?" You know how it goes. So you're
Right.
doing the first inaugural football card Hall of Fame. You
Hmm.
brought Scott and Bart in to kind of head that up. You got 45 cards on the list. The top 10 vote getters will be the first inaugural card class of the Football Card Hall of Fame. I'm looking at this list of 45 guys. It's going to be hard to pick 10. I mean, the voters are obviously going to speak, but whoever finishes 11th, you can make a case for obviously every card on this list. There's not too many Scott Rowlands of the card world this list, if you
Hmm.
will. And so you're going to be set up for future classes as well. We'll start with you, Ray. Just kind of talk about, you know, how this got off the ground, and then incorporating Bart and Scott to
Yeah.
get on board and do this.
Yeah, sure. Well, about 5, 6 years ago, I started the Baseball Card Hall of Fame. And for the first three elections, I did it by myself, and it was just brutal. It was really rough and hard to do. So I brought in two more fellow YouTubers, Victor, the rookie card specialist, and Mike, this baseball card life. So I have a committee for the Baseball Card Hall of Fame. And we've done that the last 2 years in a row, and that's just taken off and gotten a lot better. And we created a separate YouTube channel called the Sports Card Hall of Fame Network. So the Baseball Card Hall of Fame, all of the classes from the first 5 years are on the Sports Card Hall of Fame network. There's going to be topics every month going on there, like features on cards from each class. Once a month, we try and keep up with that. So then the three of us were talking, and we had a lot of people coming back at us saying, we need to expand into other sports. So we thought that was a great idea. So we're starting off next now with Card Hall of Fame, and this is the first inaugural class for that. And it's the same rules apply, which I'm going to have the two committee commissioners explain all that to you guys. And we're really excited to just keep expanding this Sports Card Hall of Fame network to all the other sports. So gradually, yes, before people ask, there'll be basketball, there'll be hockey, and who knows after that, maybe polo. I don't know. But we're really thrilled that we got, in my opinion, two guys that really know football cards more than anyone on YouTube. And it's been a joy so far to watch this ballot grow in just a couple days. It's been out, and I'm going to be done talking now, and I'm going to introduce the two guys that are running it, unless you want to, John. But
No, go
these
ahead,
two
go
guys
ahead.
are
This
the
is
expert
your
football, and they're going to
baby,
take it from
and
here.
these guys are
Okay.
spearheading this. Go ahead.
So the two gentlemen that I have running the Football Card Hall of Fame is Scott Nathan. His channel is Scotty Tradition, and the other channel is Bart from Bart's Cards. And I'm telling you, I've been following these guys since they first started, and that's years ago. And their football knowledge is better than anyone's out there. Football cards, and it fit perfectly. It fit like a glove. So they're running the Football Card Hall of Fame. I'm going to let them everything to all you guys. They're going to go through the cards and just have fun with it. So I just hope everyone checks out the Sports Card Hall of Fame network if they want to vote, and go to there and you'll see the link of the channel, and you can click on that link. And pretty much the same way that baseball is run. You'll have the pictures of each cards, and you just select 10 cards. So I'm going to take it from here.
All right, Bart, Scott. I don't know who wants to go first. Kind of. Did you two? Well, let me ask a question, if I may. Uh, there's a list of 45 cards. I have it in front of me. I'm sure you have it. Was this you putting your two heads
Right.
together and coming up with this initial class of 45 candidates? I will say.
Yeah, we did. We kind of got on our own, just kind of worked a list. We had hoped to get lists of 50, and I think we both realized it started to get a little watered down in the mid 40s, where great cards, obviously there's way more than that than you can start listing out. But when we're thinking about the inaugural football card Hall of Fame class, we knew it was starting to get watered down. So then we just kind of rallied up with Ray, Vic, and Mike as well. And we just kind of did a little arbitration between the two of us to see where we would hone in on it. I think it was super easy for about the first 40. And then I think we just probably did a little compromise for those last couple. And he got a couple and I got a couple from our final choices. But there weren't any real arguments there because, it was just splitting hairs. They were all great cards at those points. So, since football cards don't get a lot of love, we've been probably anxiously awaiting this moment, me and Scott, and so we were excited when we got the opportunity for sure.
Yeah,
Scott, your thoughts?
Yeah, Bart pretty much hit on all the key points there. I think we're both just excited for this opportunity to kind of look into especially more the vintage side of football a little more. We do have some more modern and semi-modern players on there as well, but so much of YouTube is centered around the more modern football players, your Mahomes of the world and Justin Herberts and Joe Burrow, and we've all heard their cards and videos, and they're very exciting newer players. But I've been a fan of Bart's channel too. We've both been on YouTube, I think, for at least a decade. We're both, I think, true collectors as well. Him with the 49ers and myself with the Green Bay Packers, and we kind of view the whole football spectrum through our own separate eyes, I think. And we're just really excited to share the list with you.
Well, I'm not just saying this because I'm talking to you now. I mean, when I got the list a few days ago and was looking, I'm a huge football guy myself. I mean, it's going to be tough. There's going to be some really, really good cards on the outside looking in after the first year. So that's just the mark of putting a great list together. It's funny when I was looking through it, guys. I'm like, to me, that's a no-brainer. That's a no-brainer. That's a no-brainer. And I had more than 10 no-brainers. So what I would call a no-brainer, there's going to be some no-brainers that don't get in, at least in the first class, if you will. We're going to go through these, and like you said, Scott, you got, obviously most of these guys are retired players, Hall of Famers, but you do have some guys still playing with I'll give it away with Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers and that. And somebody might say, well, should you wait till they're retired before they make like a football card Hall of Fame list? And my answer to that, I'll let you guys answer that. With Tom Brady, we don't even know when that day's ever going to come anymore. So, but your thoughts to that? I mean, it's only a couple players, so it's not a huge deal. But was that a topic of discussion when putting the list together?
Maybe not so much on whether the player was retired. I think we both probably leaned towards the side of we didn't want anything too recent to be on the list. We definitely were looking for staying power of the card. And so those two guys that you just mentioned there have been in the league for quite some time. So those cards still have a little bit of age to them. As far as how long they've been around and how long they've collected hobby enthusiasm and things like that. So that's why we're willing to do it. Patrick Mahomes Prism, while doing a lot of things for the hobby and collecting a lot of fame and stuff, I think both of us just weren't quite willing to take that step as far as a card that modern and that recent in production to put on this list, at least for the first ballot, right?
Yeah, I would agree with that, Bart. You know, Rodgers and Brady are clearly two first ballot Hall of Famers, and you know, two all-time greats in their own regard. You know, Rodgers with some of his efficiency numbers, and you know, Brady with just the number of Super Bowls and just his all-time winning numbers as well. So I think those two got on the list, and we kind of stopped it with those two being on this first ballot, anyways.
And I don't have to know anyone in this room. You know, when you're talking to vintage cards, right? One of the things I love about vintage and why I'm heavy vintage in comparison to modern is you only have one rookie card most of the time. I mean, there's a few exceptions where there could be 2 or 3 versions, but with the modern day cards, right? You know, Patrick Mahomes has 125 different rookie cards.
Sure.
You know, I always get asked like, "Hey, which Mahomes rookie should I get?" I'm like, whatever one you love, or that does that, that moves your meter, right? So that's the beauty of vintage is you really can kind of focus, especially when you're talking about a rookie card. You can almost focus on one card. It doesn't get watered down like some of the modern players. So
And I think that's where our head was at with the staying power. You know,
yeah,
give it a couple years for, all of those cards to exist and see which ones kind of rise to the top in popularity and things like that. You know, with Panini Prisms, all right, well, if Fanatics buys them out and Topps comes back to football, hopefully, right? Then does
Absolutely.
Panini Prism maintain that popularity and things like that? But I will say that we weren't exclusive to rookie cards. For this
yeah.
is just obviously when you're talking vintage, as you say, rookie cards reign supreme in those older sets, and they just capture our eye a little bit faster than some of those second, third year cards and so on.
All right, guys, we're gonna start. I don't know if you want me to go through again. I'm gonna put some for those that are gonna see this on YouTube. I may actually have the real card here, and I'll hold it up for those to see. I do have some photos of cards I don't own, and I'll put those up. Any of you guys want to chime in, talk about the card, the player? By all means, I'm sure I'll have a few comments along the way. We're gonna go in chronological order. In other words, from the earliest year to present day or more modern day, I should say. And we'll start with card number 1, which is the 1933 Sport Kings Red Grange. I mean, again, this is a iconic card. And again, I don't want. I could say this with every card, right? Like if this doesn't get in, I'd be surprised. But there's going to be 35 surprises here. That being said, so anything you want to add with the first card here on the list?
Scott,
Yeah.
I'd like to take this one.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think this one, and we could talk about the next one on the list too, the 33 Sport Kings Jim Thorpe. They kind of go hand in hand, those two cards. Those are two cards that I actually own as well. They're just beautiful, colorful cards for the time. And Jim Thorpe and Red Grange are just two of those first early football players that really made the game popular. Red Grange playing for the Bears and Chicago area, and was a great college player as well. And Jim Thorpe, Mr. All the first multi-sport athlete, really, with his Olympic stuff he had going on, and both of those two just did so much for the early game of football.
Yeah, no doubt. That Jim Thorpe, I mean, that card in high grade is six figures. Obviously, most know that. It's sort of the when we talk baseball, everyone thinks of 52 tops man. I always kind of put that as the sort of the football equivalent. Thorpe was just multi-sport, just one of the greatest athletes ever. And it's just an iconic card. Is that again? It's gonna I'm gonna be a broken record saying this. I'd be surprised if that doesn't get in, but that's going to be the fun of this, right? Is seeing what the public, decides to where they cast their vote as well. If you want to do 3 and 4 and kind of put them together, National Chick Leagues, the Newt Rockney and the Bronco Nagurski. I'm going to put the Rockney card here up on the screen for those watching the video. Obviously legendary coach, but great player too. People sometimes forget what a great player he was because you hear more about some of the great stories from his coaching days. But anything with again with these two, again, classic iconic cards.
35 National Chickle. That's our first football set, really. That is the first nationally issued football set that's out there. 33 Sport Kings was obviously a mixed bag of other sports and I think other professions a little bit in there too. But 35 National Chickle, all pro players except Newt Rockney there, but him and Bronco Nagurski, again with the Red Grange and Thorpe, you just can't tell the story of football without those folks. And Newt Rockney, known for the coach of Notre Dame, the Four Horsemen, win one for the Gipper speech and those types of things. Without college football, we wouldn't have had those stepping stones towards the NFL. And so, and as the NFL was getting off the ground, basically, college football was carrying them to those places. They were creating the stars, the galloping ghost and things like that, and then feeding them into the NFL. And so NFL was built on that. And so those personalities and things lent themselves to the growing of professional football. So Newt Rockney is just a big name in the start of everything. And so, the one non-football player there in that set definitely just, it sparks interest, it sparks stories, it sparks memories, it sparks anything you could think of about what is good about this hobby and sports cards and things when you're thinking about it. And then Bronco Nagurski, that's just our, obviously we've got a couple of good players there on the list and of cards that, fit the storyline of they're just a foundational piece to the NFL, but, just a hard nose. We're probably Red Grange, absolutely tough, all of them to play both sides of the ball. He's maybe kind of known as just being a little bit prettier, a little bit faster. Bronco Nagurski is just known for being hard-nosed and running through people. He was just, run through a brick wall type of guy. And so in that card itself, I don't know of the overall print runs back then, but nowadays you see pop reports and they're so small and they just can't find those. That's if we had a relative mainstream holy grail, that would be the card.
Yeah. And what a beautiful set it is too. Just the colors and it looks like something out of just a painting, and it's just beautiful. And a lot of the cards in that set, the total like PSA pop reports are around 100 or so, or less for each of the cards total across all grades. So yeah, a lot different than some of the modern cards you talk about.
Yeah, and a great point too, Bart. With the Chickle set, that's the first like dedicated to football. The Sport Kings was sort of just from various sports. Speaking of Rockney, he did, if I'm not mistaken, he had a 1933 Sport Kings as well, which isn't on your list. Was that something you discussed, like, hey, we're going to put the Chickle on but not the Sport Kings, and what factors maybe led to that?
I'm not sure if I'm familiar with that card, to be honest.
Yeah, I believe so, but I'm not positive. Well, all right, no problem. I mean, there's always going to be next year for 35 of these cards, and that one. And I have I mentioned to you before we recorded, I got a card I wanted to see on this list, and hopefully next year I'm gonna politic. That's the one thing on my channel I can.
Lobbying is okay. We're welcome to that. Yeah.
For one card. So, let's group the next 4 together, 5 through 8. They're all from the 1948 Leaf set. I love the 1948 Leaf baseball, the football as well. You got the Sid Luckman rookie, the Bobby Lane rookie, Sammy Ball rookie, and the Chuck Bednarik rookie. Obviously, all rookie cards, all Hall of Famers, legends of the sport. Kind of easy, when you're looking at that 48 Leaf set, these definitely rise to the top, and they come to the forefront. Anything you want to add on those four?
I'll take a piece and then throw it over to Scotty there. But 48 Leaf was our next set, so obviously a big jump there from 35, waiting around until 48. But as you list those in a group, it just kind of shows the transition of football just through those couple of decades there. When we're talking about guys that, if you look at their statistics, they're heavy on the running of the football, and then all of a sudden 3 out of those 4 are quarterbacks, right? And you see the transition in football and what starts to get popular as the pigskins flying through the air with Luckman and Ball. And then Bednarik, Concrete Charlie, you get a nickname like that, we're probably all on board, and a fantastic looking card too. And as you said, there's multiple sports with 48 Leafs. I personally can't get enough of them. I just love putting those things on display. They were all black and white photos, and they were colored later, and they just popped. There's lots of different variations and things, so we didn't really specify, whether he had a different color sock on or if he had a nickname listed on his 48 Leaf, because there are some variations with those players that you're talking about. But some beautiful cards, and quarterbacks were king already, and so you saw 3 out of 4 of those being quarterbacks.
Yeah, just to add to what Bart was saying, 3 of the 4 are quarterbacks. The Sammy Baugh is probably the most popular card in that set. The Bednarik card is very expensive. Yeah, it's a short print, and it's very hard to find. Even, I think like a PSA 6 just sold for like $12,000 or $11,000. So it's a very expensive card, and for NFL collectors and especially Eagles collectors as well. But that 48 set is just really a colorful set as well. I think that's just a set that has a lot of staying power from over the years. Ironically, it is a very trim set too. So if you do decide to collect that set, it's very advantageous just to kind of buy full bordered cards if you can find them, because those sets were like a trimmer's dream for like many decades for whatever reason.
Yeah, and with the price of what they go for, great point, Scott, too. Probably almost, I hate to say it like this, but you're probably almost better off buying a graded specimen. That
Absolutely.
way you don't get taken advantage of some of those. As we know in the hobby, some of these trimmers are unfortunately, very good at what they do. They sometimes even fool the grading companies, as crazy as that sound. Everyone in this room knows what I'm about to say, but this is more of a PSA for those maybe listening that don't realize it or watching. Someone might say, well, why, it went from 35 to 48. And they obviously, with the war going on, cards were not in production during those years. So it wasn't like there wasn't any worthy candidates for 13 years. There just wasn't any cards during that time period. So there's that space gap. I think the majority of collectors and hobbies do know that, but just to fill in that just in case anyone was wondering. So we go to card number 9 on this list, and just so everyone knows, we're going in by year order. This is not what Scott or Bart necessarily are ranking them. We're just going from earliest year all the way up to modern day. Number 9 is the 1950 Bowman autogram rookie card. Again, another, all these cards are going to be iconic cards. I'm going to sound like a broken record. People who aren't diehard football fans don't realize how great autogram was, and one of those early quarterbacks that it's hard to compare quarterbacks from different eras and whatnot, and but one of the early great ones, and many quarterbacks wanted to, great quarterbacks that came later wanted to be autogram and someone they looked up to. I don't know if you want to add anything with autogram or not, but feel free.
Just Otto Graham's just a great player. He was just a winner. I think he won something like 9 straight All Pros or 9 straight Pro Bowls. I forget which one it was, but I don't think they have. I'm not even sure if they had the Pro Bowl yet at that time. But it was like 9 straight All Pro, All League type
All
awards.
pros. I think
Yeah.
all league or all pros back
And
then.
multiple championships as well. And just a winner over the time. I actually just picked up this card last year, and I think it was a PSA 5, and it's just a gorgeous looking card. I love the 1950 Bowman set. It's very simple. It's similar to the 1950 Bowman baseball set. Just a picture on the front, no name on the front, and it's just kind of a card that's just art, basically.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, number 10 on the list. I'm going to put it on screen here for those watching the video. It's the 1951 Bowman Tom Landry. There are a lot of people who only know Tom Landry wearing the fedora on the Dallas Cowboys sidelines. But he played. He was obviously, as you see here, a New York Giant, which I always find interesting, being a legendary Cowboys coach. Better coach. This is one of those where, probably more known, obviously, for his coaching. When I showed my son that card, he knew who, and my son's 23, so this is, he's younger. He knew Tom Landry as the coach of the Cowboys in the hat, but he didn't realize he played, and he didn't realize he played for the Giants. Now, in his defense, he's 23, but I think there's a lot of people, even maybe a little bit older than 23, that didn't realize, Tom Landry was a player in his own right, but more known for the coaching prowess and the Super Bowls and all that stuff. But again, another iconic card, the shot of the card with him throwing the ball kind of, in action. Just a cool card. It's a card sort of, I don't own it at this point, but it's on my list of someday maybe to acquire. Anything you guys want to add with Tom Landry, the card, or the player / coach?
51 Bowman's just a real popular set. 50 Bowman is pretty iconic in itself, as Scotty said. I do personally like a little bit more color and a little bit more size to the cards. I love me some 1950 Bowman just because there's so many key cards to my collection that had to be 1950s. But 51s, it's a bigger card. You have some beautiful team, at this point, vintage old school logos on those cards. Tom Landry, it always helps to be in a major media market for sports cards and things like that. So New York always helps. And New York in the 50s was just kind of almost a mecca for sports and things like that, or in multiple sports, not just football. So that helps his popularity, builds it up. And then obviously if you have a coach of America's team for so many years, people are going to look around for, memories and artifacts or something like that to have in their collections for him. And guess what? He was a player, so that's pretty cool. People don't realize it. He was, he got All Pro one year. He was a defensive back and a punter. Had over 30 interceptions in his career and 300 some punts. So it wasn't just some bum that decided to turn coach. He was a legitimate player too, and known for both big teams, but not a Hall of Famer as a player, just as a coach there.
And on a side note, I'm just trying to. Sorry. On a side note, I was just trying to picture, Tom Landry and Vince Lombardi as coordinators on the same team, which is pretty ridiculous to think about.
Yeah.
For the fans.
Yeah, we could do a whole show on some legendary coaching staffs, even before they became head coaches. Just 3 or 4 like Hall of Fame coaches on one sideline. Just crazy stuff, like you just pointed out there, Scott. All right, moving on to the 1952, the Bowman Large. You have 2 cards, 10 and 11 and 12. Jim Lansford, rookie, and Frank Gifford, rookie. Frank Gifford, both great players. Frank Gifford also went on to become, in the media and broadcasting, and even known in his own right for that. And then the Kathy Lee Gifford, obviously. But again, the Frank Gifford stands out of the 2 cards to me. just because even people who aren't football fans got to know Frank Gifford even after his playing career. Any side notes you guys want to add with these two cards from the 52 large?
Just building on 51, the cards got bigger, the cards got more colorful, and so they grab your eye real fast. Bowman made small and large that year. The large was a little bit more scarce, and then obviously, just the size of the card lends itself to damage and things like that too. So you have some condition things that go along with that. That helps a little bit with the Lansford rookie as well. Not just a Hall of Fame rookie, but he was the last card in the set. So old school printing capabilities and things like that. Those cards that are found on corners of printing sheets just did not go well historically. And then same things you said for Gifford, and like I said, major media market giants. And then that card is just beautiful to me. The pose, the helmet, the carrying of the football and everything like that. That one just screams vintage football.
Yeah, no doubt. Moving on, kind of moving along. 55 Topps All-American. You got 3 cards from this particular set. You got the Jim Thorpe, Don Hudson, and the next card in the 15th slot, just on the list, that Four Horsemen card. You mentioned them earlier in the conversation. This card is a legendary card. Now rather than have one great player, you have 4, I'd be surprised. I'll say it. I'd be surprised if that card doesn't get in. It's probably going to, and if it doesn't, it's going to be right on that cusp. Anything you want to add with these 3, the 55 Topps All-American?
Well, I'll just start with the Four Horsemen card. As you mentioned, depicting the Notre Dame backfield. And just I find it ironic that like 2 of the only college cards on here are Notre Dame related. It just goes to show you like how big of a powerhouse Notre Dame was during that time. And it is just a beautiful card, a lot of great color. It just looks so iconic with the 4 players standing there. You got the cool logos on these 55 Topps All-Americans for their college teams that they're on. The same thing with the Don Hudson in Alabama. And I believe the Jim Thorpe has the Carlisle Indians logo on there. And that card's just beautiful too. The Jim Thorpe, it's got that deep blue color. And then the Hudson kind of just reminds me of that big time period between 35 and 48 when there was nothing. That was pretty much Don Hudson's entire career. So the only other, and he's arguably one of the best players of all time at any position. And he doesn't have a card until 1955. He does have 34 Wheaties card, which I actually have. I just picked that up last year. Very scarce card, but nothing in the mainstream for Don Hudson over that entire time period of his career, which was like a 10-year span.
Yeah, to Scotty's point, we had such a big gap that set reached back into those lost years and provided us those players via their college uniforms and everything like that. But there's a lot of nostalgia that goes with that because, if, you're like a Heisman collector or something, so many of the, I don't know how, probably first 15 to 20 or so years of Heisman Trophy winners are in that set as well. Beautiful color. And then there's a lot, while not being too much, I would say, there's a lot going on in those cards, color variations, and then whether it's horizontal and vertical and things like that. They were exploring some neat stuff. And you had all of those big names from the first 30 years of football carrying that set. Definitely a big time popular set amongst football collectors for sure. So the big names are going to get some.
Yeah, no doubt. And I'm sure, walking around the National, how many times someone, ask a dealer, hey, I'm looking for the Four Horsemen card. Have it. Just a real in demand, on many of a want list. And so again, it's an iconic classic card that going to be hard. It's going to get in. It's just whether it does it get in this year or and if not, definitely at the top of the list for future classes. Moving on through 57 Topps. You got 3 cards, 16, 17, and 18 on the list, highlighted by 2 legendary quarterbacks, Johnny Unitas rookie, Bart Starr rookie, and no slouch himself, Paul Horning rookie. So, I mean, just again, a great set highlighted by three legendary Hall of Famers. So, again, these I'm sure were easily rose to the top when you were compiling your list. So, anything you guys want to add to those guys, by all means.
It helps when the player makes the card, right? So some great Hall of Famers carrying that set, and that leads to the popularity of most larger sets in any sport if there's a strong rookie class there. And so you can't beat any of those three. A horizontal set with two pictures now offered to you, right? One action shot and one kind of portrait photo, if you will. And just those guys carried football, from their onset through the 60s and stuff. So lots of popularity there. I'll pass it on to Scotty. He's got some favorite cards in that set.
Yeah, there is definitely a couple of big time Packer rookies in the set with Starr and Horning, and obviously the Unitas is just an all-American great card as well. Just the green color in the background, just awesome. One interesting thing about that set is I believe the Unitas is actually a double print. So there's a lot more of those floating around out there in the ether than the Starr. So you're only going to see about half. If you look at the pop reports, there about half the Stars are graded as the Unitas, but both are extremely popular. Obviously, Bart Starr was the quarterback for the 5 championships for the Packers in the 60s Lombardi teams. So Packers have a great collecting base, and obviously that's a big reason that makes the Starr popular. And as you mentioned, Horning, he had the all-time points in a season record at 176 for many, many years until LaDainian Tomlinson broke that in 2006. So just a great player in his own right. He did it all. He, caught the ball, ran the ball. I think he was a kicker as well. That helped him get those point totals up there. So I just love the set. Just super colorful, just like so many of the 1950s sets are.
Now I got to ask you. You made a great point in that the Unitas is twice as double printed in comparison to the Starr. Not everyone's going to know that, but those that do you think that will influence voting? Do you think that makes maybe the Starr a better chance to get in on this first inaugural ballot?
That's a good question. I'm a little biased because I am a Packers fan, but I do think the United is probably a little more popular than the Starr among collectors overall. But if you look at the pricing's I think pretty similar actually.
Yeah,
I do think the United is more popular nationally.
Yeah. But to your point, I think there is some level of availability that leads to popularity, right? Like if it's overly scarce, then it doesn't make the want lists because I may not run into that. And if I do, it's at some crazy price point or something like that. So it does have to be somewhat prevalent in order to be like, that's a high demand card. We want that one. And so Unitas wins with that regard.
Yeah, no doubt. Great point. Next card is a card I own. So, gets my vote. And again, I'm originally from New York City, but now in Syracuse. This gentleman is a Syracuse legend. He's just a legend, but especially here in Syracuse, arguably one of the greatest all-time football players. I do own the card, so for those watching, I'm going to hold it up for those to see. I'm talking about the 58 Jim Brown rookie. Topps card known for condition issues. This is a PSA 3, still a nice card, and presents very well for a PSA 3. I'll just chime in because I know quite a bit about Jim Brown. Great football player, obviously, went on to become an actor in Hollywood, known for not taking a lot of crap, even off the field. But he was many people saw he played lacrosse as well here at Syracuse University, and many will tell you who were around to see him play, he was a better lacrosse player than a football player. As crazy as that sounds, there just was no professional lacrosse leagues after college, so his choice was very easy, and started the Legend of 44 at the university, and it's was only given to certain players after him. Floyd Little, Ernie Davis, who will come up again during tonight's conversation, and then really never worn since Rob Conrad was the last to wear the 44 at Syracuse. And there's always talk, especially now with the NIL, to bring it back and give it to like a 5-star recruit to get him to come here. But I've said enough. I'm partial to Jim Brown. Many people say he's not the nicest guy in the world, but you can't argue with the performance on the field and then his post-career as an actor as well. And anything you want to add there? I covered a lot, but feel free.
He dominated from day one, 10 consecutive years of domination, rushing title upon rushing title. Obviously, his touchdown records and things like that, they've all been surpassed since, but he played probably, less games overall for sure, but less games per season as well back then. But there was just no question about where Jim Brown stands in football lore, as it were. But then the card itself, if we were to ever, make an NFL logo in the same vein that the NBA logo makes with Jerry West, it might be this pose right here. You can spot, the angles of him running and this card and this outline, from 100 meters to know exactly what you're looking at and everything like that. So it's a very iconic card with such significant contrast with that black background and things like that. And there was no better player, running the ball for his time in football.
Those are great points, Bart. And I think all of us would be pretty surprised if he didn't get in on the first ballot this year.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not trying to get anyone else to vote just because I am, but that's gonna be one of my 10 for sure. One a great quote, not a quote, but I don't remember exactly what a reporter. If you watch some of the old film of him running the ball, he used to tend to run into traffic, and I remember a reporter asked him, like, "You're not slow. Why are you running toward the defender rather than avoid him?" And he said, "I want to lay the hit." He liked to, as an offensive player, he liked to inflict pain. He never would run out of bounds. He would often get asked why, when you're that important player to your team, why not when there's no more yards to get, run out of bounds and live for the next play. And that just wasn't his mentality. He wanted to let his presence be felt even as an offensive player. And it's just something, as playing in high school myself and youth, is something I just always remembered. For me, I was, as a tight end, I wasn't going to outrun anybody. So I always like to lower a little shoulder as well. So, but again, like you guys said, it'd be a shocker if it doesn't get in, but we'll see what the results bear out. But I'm a little biased too. Next two cards are from the 1962 top set. You got Iron Mike Ditka, and you got Fran Tarkenton. I'm going to put the Ditka on the screen. I mean, he just looked the part, right? I mean, just a mean dude, played hard, and then obviously became a legendary Bears coach as well. Saturday Night Live skits, Ditka, and went on to a broadcasting career himself. The Sweater. I mean, we could go on for days. Just a classic card. Fran Tarkenton, really one of those first quarterbacks, right, that integrated the running game as a quarterback to avoid a rush and roll out and make plays with his legs. It's obviously common in today's NFL, but back then it was not the norm as we know it today. So I when I think of Tarkenton, I'm a Steelers fan, so I'm not a Vikings guy per se. I always thought he was sort of underrated. I always thought like people overlooked him, but when you look at what he did, I mean, he didn't get a Super Bowl ring. I think that sort of hurt his perception. which I don't think is always reality. But a legendary quarterback too that I think, like I just said, doesn't get enough shine for his playing days. Anything you guys want to jump in here and add to what I said, by all means.
Well, for Fran, exactly. He went 0 for 4 in Super Bowls in the 70s. So he was the Jim Kelly of his era with some fast feet. And then the 62 top set, someday as we carry these years on, there will be some non-rookie cards from 62 that potentially get in, like Unitas and other things, just because it's such a popular set with that, just black borders and the design, the horizontal, with the black and white photo, kind of an homage to the years before. But hey, we're cool now in the 60s and we can print color and things, and we have some of that too. So just great looking cards, and then condition sensitive, which creates a little bit extra of chase and a little bit extra popularity. And Mike Ditka lived multiple lives over the years, right? He was successful at basically anything he did, and he just kept doing different things from player to coach to announcer, etc. So just an icon in his own right. Scotty, what you got?
Yeah, you mentioned the Johnny Unitas from the 62 top set as well. The Jim Brown is also a very popular card from that set. Yeah. And there's just a slew of cards from that set that are really kind of iconic in their own right. As far as the Ditka goes, although he was a great player, certainly the 85 Bears coach and all of that, all the pop culture, Saturday Night Live stuff that comes with him is
the beer commercials.
Yeah,
all that. Yeah.
I think it only helps the popularity of that card for him.
Yeah, and this is one of my guys. This is one of my favorite sets, just as a standalone set. Forget the player and the checklist. Like you said, Bart, you got the black borders, which are obviously make them immediately condition sensitive. But I love the set, like you said, the horizontal, and then you got that in action, black and white inset shot. I'm going to politic here. I mentioned it earlier in the show. I was going to politic for a card that didn't make the list, and again, a little more Syracuse homer here. He didn't actually ever get to play in the NFL, but he is on the 62 tops card. Obviously, his rookie. I have the card here for those that are watching in video form. It's the 62 tops Ernie Davis rookie. If you watch the Express with Dennis Quaid, that movie was that was about Ernie Davis. Unfortunately, he was the number 1 draft pick. And it was funny because he was drafted by the Cleveland Browns, who had Jim Brown, basically his predecessor, and unfortunately was diagnosed with leukemia, was in training camp, but unfortunately the disease, cost him his life, and never got to play on the field. But those of us here in Syracuse would tell you, had he not been dealt that cruel twist of fate, he was going to be an NFL legend in his own right, playing with Jim Brown, someone who basically helped him recruit him to Syracuse, what it's the old what could have been. It's just an iconic card. That was a PSA 5, which, like we said, with those condition sensitive 62. So I know it's not on the list this year, guys, but I'm politicking here to someday, whether it be next year or some year down the line, see that 62 tops Ernie Davis. I know he didn't obviously play, get to fulfill his career as the number 1 draft pick, but obviously not his fault, but an iconic card, at least to me, and I think to some others as well. So little shameless homerism there, but I think it is a desirable card, so it could be a future candidate there as well. So going to 63, we got something other than tops. We got 63 Fleer with the Len Dawson and Lance Allworth rookies. Again, all these guys are going to be Hall of Famers, so it's a broken record. But Len Dawson just recently passed away as well. Wanted to add that. Lance Allworth, another guy. He's sort of reminds me of the Fran Tarkington of the receiver world. Just didn't get as much credit as he should have. And those who maybe are a little bit more football historians or care about the history of the game know, but I think people who aren't as such kind of overlook them or bypass them. Just really one of the first great wide receivers. Not first one, but really sort of a game-changing type of players. I'll hand it off to you guys. Anything you want to chime in here?
I'll just mention about the set 63 Fleer. For those who don't know, AFL and NFL were separate, and in that time period, and so AFL for those years were in a different set than the NFL. So NFL was over in tops, and AFL was in the Fleer, as you mentioned. And these are kind of the first two big cards for the AFL. They had a couple years prior to that, but these are the first two, stars that their cards kind of took off, and they were a mainstay for the enduring couple of years for the AFL before the merger. And great stars. I'm always a big fan of Len Dawson with just the old school, smoking cigarettes at halftime and things like that, and getting pictures taken. But we definitely need to speak the history of the game through the cards, and so AFL has to be represented, and two great players to do so.
Yeah, that's a good point, Bart. I think Lance Allworth was the first AFL player put into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And so, yeah, he definitely has to be on the list. And of course, Len Dawson, the great iconic Chiefs quarterback as well. So otherwise, I think you pretty much touched on everything with those two.
Yeah. Moving along, we'll kind of pick it up. You got the next card, number 24, going in chronological order. The 1963 Topps, Ray Nitschke. Nitschke, a great player in his own right. 65 Topps, Joe Willie Namath, rookie. I'm not a big, speaking personally, I'm not a big Joe Namath guy. I think he sort of, some of the off the field stuff sort of gave him a little more. When you look at, again, it's a different era, but, and I'm a Steelers guy, and I will tell you, I'm not a huge Terry Bradshaw fan. It surprises people, and he's coming up on the list as well. But some of these quarterbacks that threw almost as many interceptions as touchdowns. I mean, we all know Joe Namath, famous for guaranteeing the Super Bowl victory and then delivering it. I think that sort of made his career, and then obviously the off the field stuff. And but he's a Hall of Famer, right? He's in, whether you agree or disagree, and he's an iconic figure, and still talked about, and for very, even after his playing career. Susie Colbert, most people know that story, but so I don't want to, anything you want to quick add with Namath and Nitschke?
Well, I think Ray Nitschke. What's cool about that set, the 63 top set, is you almost get like a color match for the teams. The Nitschke's kind of green and yellow on the borders, and even another card that we considered putting on this list, the Bob Lilly for the Cowboys, is kind of like almost blue and red around the borders. So it's kind of like there's almost like a little bit of a color match to some of these, which is kind of a unique aspect. Both are great cards, and then the Namath, of course. I just think it's more of a pop culture card as well. I think that the New York area does play a huge part in why this card is popular, just being in the population center. And the card actually says New York on it in big bold letters. I think it's just a card that people like, and I love the picture. The story is interesting about the card, right? The picture of his face on the front of it. I think he was sick or recovering from surgery at the time, and when they took that photo, so the whole card itself has kind of an iconic story behind it. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, and Tall Boy was just a new design, new thing coming up. So much color because of the presentation there. So to your point, John, the card does surpass the player's status in the NFL in this case. It's a short print, so that leads to a little bit more chase, and then condition issues of, I can only imagine how tough it was to store cards and things like that back in the day. But
Yeah,
you
there
at
were
least
no
had the
there were no
benefit if
top
they were all
loaders
the
or
same
semi-rigid.
size, you could protect some with the others, but tall boys weren't going to give you that opportunity compared to your other years. And so that just adds to some of the challenges and things like that. But this card definitely transcends the player, because it's not always the best exercise to look at the touchdown to interception ratio of some of these former quarterbacks.
Yeah. No, you're right. Moving on. 66 Philadelphia. Dick Buckus, Gale Sayers. Again, the players speak for themselves. Gale Sayers, not the longest career. Had some injuries, but one of the greatest running backs to ever do it. And Dick Buckus, you just have to say Dick Buckus, and people cringe just on the name alone. So again, two, I'll say it, kind of easy choices. But again, when you're compiling this list, right, when you're only limited to 4, especially on the first, this is the first ballot, right? So it's not as easy as people might think. But two great cards. Anything you want to throw in there?
Well, since this is probably the only time we'll talk about Philadelphia, this was the NFL's equivalent of what Topps was to the AFL during this time period, from 64 to 67. And these were no-brainer cards. We didn't have to discuss or banter about it. They were on the ballot. There's no question about it. Some monsters of the Midway, and Gale Sayers, has an all-time great pose on his card as well.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Yep. All right, next card. Gonna move the meter here one way or the other, right? I'm gonna put it on the screen. This is a card I own. I don't actually have it on my desk here. 1970 Topps, O.J. Simpson rookie. Just the name alone is going to bring up all the stuff we all know about. Do you think? Obviously, O.J. Simpson, the player, is one of the all-time great running backs, right? First, 2,000 yards and just an incredible player. And then, we know what happened after his playing days. Do you think that case and all that's involved? Do you think that hurts the voting when it comes to this card vote? Do you think that factors in at all?
Probably. And I would say the voting. I don't think it really hurts the collectability of the card and the popularity of the card. If you are a vintage football collector, you have or you will be getting this card. All of the things that he did in the 70s, the 2,000-yard seasons and things like that, and 14-game seasons, just crazy stuff. And, the highlights just are awesome to watch. But to your point, if there are, because there will always be folks, and we want those periphery, folks, and we want some baseball folks jumping over and getting football popular with them and stuff like that, then yes, the pop culture stuff will probably jump into that. I'm also admin for PSA Sports Card Collectors Group, and anytime it's been a while, but anytime somebody shares with that card, the comment section gets a little lively. And so I think it's been quite some time since somebody shared it for that reason, but collectors are still going to go after this card for sure.
Yeah, I agree. He's on this list for his football accolades, not so much his post-football accolades.
Yeah, no doubt. I spoke a little bit about this next gentleman. It's a card I own as a Steeler fan. It's the 71 Topps Terry Bradshaw rookie. I'll put it on my camera here. This is PSA 5. Crazy as it sounds, I'm a huge Steeler fan, even growing up in New York City. And not, people always say, "Oh man, you must love Terry Bradshaw," and they're shocked when I tell them, not really. I know he's a great player, 4 Super Bowl rings. Probably wouldn't have him without him, but I'm more of a Mean Joe Green guy. And that card didn't make the list. So I'm hoping to see Mean Joe Green's rookie again, I'm going to politic from a personal point of view. Mean Joe Green, arguably one of the greatest defensive players of all time, and quite frankly, was the catalyst for the Steelers becoming, lovable, going from lovable losers to perennial Super Bowl, champion every year. And he was the guy for me, the Coke commercial and all that. I know he's not on the list, so I'm not going to go off on a tangent, but Terry Bradshaw is. I would have went with Mean Joe, but again, I'm biased. But Bradshaw, 4 rings, no doubt. Outspoken, right? Good for some one-liners, and never shied away from the microphone before the game, after the game, and if he could get to one during the game, he would have as well. Obviously, post-career, doing the still working, doing the as an analyst, and just he's a guy you can laugh at. He'll laugh at himself, and I think some of that post-career stuff too probably has him on this list. Would you agree with that point?
I would. I mean, the 4 Super Bowls, I think, are probably enough to get him on the list alone. But certainly, it doesn't help some of the pop culture things after he was done with his playing days. And I totally agree with your sentiment on defensive players. Ray Nitschke, one of my all-time favorite players, and another player we'll talk about coming up is Reggie White, one of my all-time favorite players. So I totally get that sentiment. But that 71 top set is just it's interesting. It's very tough because of those colored borders, and I definitely think Terry Bradshaw deserves to be on the list either way.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little biased that I'm just not a huge fan, Scott. So I'll throw myself a little bit under the bus. I've learned to kind of love him a little bit more, like now, than I did. I was just so into Mean Joe was my guy that I gave him more credit than probably Terry. And I probably to a fault to be 100% trans.
Yeah, like Scotty said, you're preaching to the choir. We're both defensive fans, so we love Mean Joe Green card as well. He's the number 2 card in that set, but the quarterbacks win the day. You know how it goes in football. It's if there's an analogy there, the quarterback is our home run hitter, and you definitely need people that are hitting 40 doubles a year and getting plenty of hits and things like that. But those are your defenders, and they don't always quite get the popularity when it comes to the hobby, for sure.
Yep. Moving on with card number 30, 1972 Topps, Roger Staubach, rookie. Great quarterback, America's team, Tom Landry, Super Bowls, served in the military. Really, soft-spoken guy, but great competitor. This card is good to me. Whether it gets in this time or it's just the eventual, easy one to put on the list. Anything you want to add there or that I didn't cover or you wanted to add to it?
Yeah, easy add. Just Captain America, right? Squeaky clean background. I'm sure even if a kid didn't know who that was, their parents were seeing the example that he was setting and pushing towards them and stuff like that. So absolutely. And, not a big numbers guy, but a high efficiency guy. One of the first guys that, really made his, got acclaim for those types of things. And 72 is a popular, colorful set. There's some not so good looking cards in that set, but this one pops with the pink and everything like that. It's got its own new design in the 70s, and this one leads the way.
Yeah, and a funny story, being a Steeler fan, right? Like the Cowboys were really sort of the arch rival, right? As a Steeler fan, you didn't like Cowboy players, but Roger Staubach was just such a great guy and a nice guy that even as a Steeler fan, it was tough to root against him or wish him ill. So that's the kind that'll tell you something right there for me. This next one, number 31 on the list, is a card I own as well. Again, I'm going to say it. I'll be shocked if this one doesn't get in on the first ballot. It's a 1976 Walter Payton rookie, which I'll put on the screen here. This is a PSA 6 version of it. Iconic card, right? You got the big facial, facial close up. A lot of times, as we know with football cards, a lot of times you don't get that. You get them, in the helmet. You see their face through the helmet. But this one is sweetness in all his glory, close up, and another guy that just did it the right way. Didn't do a lot of trash talking. Just did his talking with this play on the field, and unfortunately died very young and too soon, even though it was, he played a full career, but we didn't get to enjoy him post career. And I'm not a Bears fan, but you don't have to be a Bears fan to really know the greatness of Walter Payton. So I'll just say I'd be surprised if this isn't one of the 10. It's not. And if it isn't, it's not going to be long before it's in this Hall of Fame card hall. So
Yeah, I'm not a big Bears fan either, obviously. but that you made a good point about like the facial portrait of that card. It really does show his face, and a lot of times with football cards you do not get to see that.
Yeah.
I think if there's like one card that any Chicago Bears collector would want, like this is probably the card. This is like the person they go to to look at for their kind of like their Michael Jordan almost.
Yeah,
who's obviously another Chicago guy, but yeah, it's that's the card for a Bears collector, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And 76 is not a good looking set. So for this card to have that kind of popularity, he's carrying it pretty good, because the designs are pretty weak. You don't have regular team logos. You've just got silly fonts for your team names and things like that. So still a card carries on.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's one of those cards, like I said, I'm not a Bears guy, but I'm like, I have to have that card's going into PC, and it's been there a while. I'm going to start rattling these off like 2 or 3 at a time, guys, even if they're not the same year, and then you can kind of chime in with any kind of comments on them. The next 3 cards on the list is the 81 Topps Montana rookie, the 82 Topps LT Lawrence Taylor rookie, the first LT until Tomlinson came along later. In the 84, I'll go for 84 Topps Dan Marino and John Elway rookie. So you got all rookies: Montana, LT, Marino, and Elway. These guys were really, you could make a point that they were sort of the face of the 80s in the NFL, all 4 of these guys. And, Marino gets to the Super Bowl in his rookie year, doesn't win it. Redskins beat him and then never gets back. And he's a great, obviously a great quarterback. I think not getting that ring sort of hurt him a little bit, but no one can argue that's a classic card. 88, specifically the 84 Topps. I can't tell you how many the centering on those is brutal, as you guys well know. And so to find, they're definitely a condition sensitive card. And Lawrence Taylor changed the way linebackers were viewed and played, and became a prototype in his own right. And Joe Montana is still arguably in some people's conversations as the great as the GOAT. I know people want to put Brady, it's you hear now it's Brady or Montana is the debate. So these guys were sort of the faces of 80s and early 90s football. Anything you want to add on the 4 cards? I just kind of wax poetically on, if you will.
Yeah, there's a lot there. Obviously, I think Scotty's pretty close to my age as well. So those, when we first started watching football, those were the biggest of big names. And so you look back on, where are their rookie cards and things like that. Joe Montana, highlights in an 81 set that doesn't have a lot of great rookies, but he's got a great classic pose. Joe Cool, you win 4 Super Bowls with 3 Super Bowl MVPs. People are going to come looking for your rookie card. And so much so that card is now iconic in that regard. LT, probably the greatest defender ever play. I think the prototype is we look for angry linebackers now. Like if I was a scout or something like that, I would just try to find out how angry he was, and because that's I learned that from LT. Just an absolute dominant force. I'm a big fan of 82 tops, but he's one of the mainstays. That's just partial to me on my collecting. I like 82, but then 84, tons of Hall of Fame rookies in 84. As we go on in the years, we'll probably get more and more, but big time set. Obviously, centering issues, like you said, lots of different colors and things. Chipping is also a big issue on the edges and stuff. It's like the white borders are almost painted on, so if you rub it against something, they start chipping right off. But the guys of the 80s, and they carried on to the 90s, and you just weren't seeing playoff runs and big games that didn't involve some of these names for sure.
All right, let's. I know Scott's going to want to talk about. Let's talk about the next card. I like this pick because it's the USFL card, right? The '84 Reggie White, right? First appearance on cardboard. Again, another guy that kind of changed the position and how it was viewed. A very soft-spoken guy, person deep of faith, and very again another guy too we lost way too soon. And this again, this is an iconic card. Like if you're whether you're Packers and Eagles or just a Reggie White fan, this card has to be in your collection. And it's not an easy. I don't think I'll let you guys think. I don't think there's a ton. Like it's not necessarily easy to find. And I think sometimes even defensive players, when it comes to the hobby, often are overlooked. When obviously it's, as we've talked about tonight, it's a quarterback-driven league, but Reggie White was really, Lawrence Taylor, and that's when I think people started to like, hey, these guys can impact the game and kind of take over a game and change a whole offensive game plan themselves. And Reggie White was one of those guys. And I wasn't necessarily a Packers. I was obviously a Steelers fan, but Reggie White was a guy you root for because he was just a really good guy and a great player. So I know, Scott being a Packers fan and a Reggie White guy, I'm sure he wants to say something to this card.
Yeah, Reggie White is probably my favorite player of all time, I'd have to say. And the 84 USFL set's just so interesting. You have like the red, white, and blue colors on it. It was its own league at the time. Somehow Reggie White ended up there first and not in the NFL, which is kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's you got the Memphis Showboats little logo on that card, and the card it's very tough in high grade. I think there's only still 6 or 7 PSA 10s in existence, so you can find the card in a 7 or 8 grade pretty fairly easily. But to get it in that high grade is really impossible because I believe they did come in like as complete sets, so you had a lot of moving around of that card, and that has like this magenta background as well, which and centering issues as well on the back and front. So it makes it a real tough card, but just love Reggie White's story. Just a very unique player. And as you mentioned, gone way too soon, passed away in 2004. So one of the best defensive players of all time, though.
Yep, no doubt. And on a lot of people's want list, regardless of what team they root for, he's just that kind of guy and that kind of player. Next one. This is another card that I'd be surprised it don't get in, this time. But, we talk about GOATs, right? I'm going to put it on the screen. I actually own this card, but I don't. It's over there. I'll just put the photo. Jerry Rice rookie, right? There's people who don't even collect football cards that know this is a Jerry Rice rookie. That's to me sort of a mark of an iconic card that someone is not even a football collector knows what that is. And it's funny. I love this card because when you look, he's a skinny guy. He doesn't, he's not a menacing looking guy, but just a great player from a small college, and just the record speaks for itself. He's got rings and he's got records that even in today's passing league, you know, which the receivers put up ungodly numbers in today's game, his record still won't be broken, and that's a testament to how great he really is. Because a lot of times, you guys know this, you know, the league was different back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, even 80s. So it's hard to compare errors. And you know, they obviously they threw the ball, but I think they throw it even more now, and yet, you know, receivers are not going to break his records. It's I always joke that it's Jerry Rice, and who's going to be the best receiver after Jerry Rice, because no one's ever gonna catch him. 1A is almost as good as one, because you're just not going to get to one, not in the wide receiver spot. You know, it's still, you know, the thing that strikes me with this card too, guys, is it's very affordable. It's not like, for even in some higher grades, it's not out of reach. It's definitely budget friendly. Obviously, due to, you know, production, it's not, you know, a short printed card or a short printed set. But I've done enough, you know, rambling about Rice. But you guys want to chime in on this iconic card?
This one's my guy, right? So yeah, I won't go too much into it, but Niners guy. First game I ever remember seeing was Super Bowl 23. He was the MVP, 11 catches, 215 yards, and a touchdown. I have the biggest PSA graded collection of Jerry Rice there is. And yeah, to your point, all of those records and things like that. His season stuff is progressively getting broken here and there, and someday we're going to find ourselves with 18 game seasons. So he may not have too many things left for season standpoints, but you know, for being
then you got to put it.
But being high end
you got to put an asterisk. You got to put an
Yeah.
asterisk. You know.
You know, I agree, but you know, if we say that, then we have to put some asterisks, you know,
Yeah.
in arrears as well, right? And Don Hudson's going to make some claims to some things. There's some running backs and some quarterbacks of different eras that can say the same things, absolutely. But yeah, his longevity is just ridiculous. Getting 1,000-yard seasons into his 40s and stuff like that. You know, getting another ring with the Raiders. Like, people don't remember those things, but just fantastic career. My favorite player for sure. And his top's number 161 there, and from 86. Great color. It pops real well, and it's very affordable in 7s and 8s for sure. It gets a little crazier in the 9s. Thankfully, I got mine, you know, way back when, because, you know, he was the first one I was really collecting. But you know, 86 pops out as far as the set goes. We got a little bland with the white borders coming after that, and the years follow. But 86 really stood out, and he leads the way for that set.
Yeah, no doubt. We'll go 2 cards here. 38, 39 running backs. The 89 score, Barry Sanders rookie, and the 1990 score supplemental, Emmett. The Barry stands out. I own these cards as well. And again, we talk about that Walter Payton, right? That close up facial shot. That when that score Sanders first came out, what did that bring me back to? Brought me back to that 76 Payton. And at that time, I didn't know how great Barry was to become and be in that discussion with guys like Walter Payton, which we do know now. And again, another iconic card, just because that extreme close up. Again, when we're talking about condition sensitive, that green, those green edge, those corners chip and get white pretty easy. You look at them the wrong way, you could probably ding a corner. But just again, iconic cards that probably, you know, arguably the 2 best running backs in the 90s. It was a shame that Barry didn't have better talent around him to have some postseason success like Emmett did. You know, and everyone, you know, that was the big then too, right? Was who's the better running back? And a lot of people sort of pointed to Emmett because of rings, but you know, Emmett had a couple guys named, you know, Troy Aikman and Michael Irvin that helped him. Barry Sanders didn't have that luxury. So to me, they're both great players. I always valued Barry Sanders as a better player, not by much. I'm not trying to besmirch Emmett. I just thought, you know, Emmett had a great offensive line. Barry had a good one at some years, but both great running backs. You can't go wrong either way. You can't go wrong with either of these cards as well. Two great cards, and obviously the Emmett is from a factory supplemental set, and again, black bordered card. It's hard to find that card above an 8, and if you do, it's going to cost you a few more dollars. But go ahead, guys. I've chimed in enough on these two cards.
Yeah, John. This is when I really started to watch football in the early '90s. So being a big living in the Upper Midwest here, was a big fan of the Packers, and we played the Lions twice a year, and I got to see Barry Sanders, run around and slice and dice, and then Emmitt Smith too in the early '90s really sliced and diced the Packers teams up with his running ability. So as you mentioned, Barry Sanders gone way too soon, not from life, but from the game. But both those cards have condition issues, as you mentioned. They're both color borders, and man, I just remember Barry Sanders being just so exciting to watch, just electric. I'm not sure we've ever seen anybody kind of quite like Barry Sanders. He's very unique.
Yeah. How many times, right? He's got 3 guys on him, and the next thing you know, he's scampering and he's out of the grass. He's running down the middle of the field or the sideline. Like, how did he get out of that? Like, that's impossible, So, Bart, you want anything?
Yeah, I would just add for the sets themselves. 89 score was a big set as far as football finally branched out, and we had more than one set issued for that year. So 89 score is kind of like our first taste of something slightly higher end, if that makes sense. There was a high print run for sure. The 89 score Barry is our equivalent. Baseball has the 89 Upper Deck Griffey. That's our, it's been so sold and bought and traded and things like that. It's a commodity in itself as far as the hobby goes. And that was kind of always like your baseline. If Barry's card's going up, then, other cards must be going up and things like that. I'm not a big fan of the pose itself, but the set and you got to have a Barry rookie if you're a football collector. And then Emmett, I got started on 1990 score, so I'm a partial to that one as well. But supplemental, I don't know, because I'm not quite that old. I started collecting then, but I wouldn't have known enough about the hobby. But my assumption is as Emmett's getting rings and things like that in the 90s, people started going looking for his rookie, and those supplemental sets were probably pretty hard to find at the time. Once eBay came around and everybody could, empty out their garage and just start sell those things one set at a time, it's obviously a lot more prevalent now. But I bet it was pretty hard to find it when people were looking for it 2-3 years after he came into the league.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback off that too, Bart. It's over there. I have a supplemental set, factory sealed. Those are getting harder to find because, as we know, with the grading space, people are cracking those open and trying to get that Gem Mint 10 Emmett. So the sealed sets are drying up a little bit as people open them up. So I'm keeping that one sealed and it's on my shelf. I also have some Emmett singles as well.
Yeah, the only people that have a sealed one of those already have an Emmett graded, right? Because there's nothing else in that set besides that card.
Yeah, no,
everything else is just protecting that
unless
card.
Unless you like Cortez Kennedy. Some people do, especially in Seattle. But not on the list. So next card, 91 Stadium Club, Brett Favre. I remember that Stadium Club. People were ripping Stadium Club at a fever pitch to get the Brett Favre. They had to backtrack a little bit because he was sort of as we all know, a late bloomer, and after the trade to Green Bay from the Falcons. I won't say much. I'll let Scott kind of take over, being a Packers guy. With the Favre Stadium Club rookie.
Yeah, what makes this card kind of unique is Favre is spelled wrong on the card, so it's an uncorrected error. And that kind of made it part of the chase too, kind of being fun that his name was spelled wrong. And also it's again, you're getting into like a really high quality image, glossy image with the Stadium Club release here. So and obviously, Favre, Super Bowl winner and multiple time MVP. Had to get an example of his rookie card on here as well. And this was the one that we used. Ironically, his 92 Stadium Club is very popular too, because that's his first card in a Packers uniform. It actually sells for more than the 91 Stadium Club, his rookie. Just kind of a fun fact there. But the 91 is what made the list.
Yeah, and that 92, if my memory serves me correct, a high number card, so a little shorter printed. Next two cards, guys, as we kind of get into the 40s here out of the 45, 41 and 42, both from the 1998 SP Authentic release. Two great players, obviously, Peyton Manning and Randy Moss rookies, and the Authentic set, very clean looking. And I always try to get rookie cards from that set. Obviously, highly desirable, not cheap. Peyton Manning having a great Hall of Fame career on it, and he's having a Hall of Fame career post field too, with the commercials and doing the analyst work, and with Eli doing some of the Monday night alternative broadcasting, and just he'd be a Hall of Famer just on that alone. Forget what he did on the field, and he's a hard guy too. Whether you were a Colts or Broncos fan, he's just a funny dude and easy guy to root for. To me, this is an iconic card. I don't own this card at this point, but it's actually on my list to hopefully someday check off that want list with Manning. But Randy Moss, again, many will argue after Jerry Rice, the next greatest receiver. Others will argue other guys, but Randy Moss definitely in that conversation. Anything you want to chime in there on those two cards?
To your points, obviously great players. And then I would say for the cards themselves, SP Authentic, to have a limited print run was a new thing on the block in that time frame. And then we saw it in all sports, but there was just a large exploration of what you could do with cards in the 90s, especially in the later 90s there. All the different popular insert sets and things like that. And in football, we did not, for the years prior to that, did not have the big name rookies to carry those sets. And then these guys showed up in 98 and they could carry any set with their popularity. And SP Authentic was just the leader of that. Great looking cards. And again, the limited print run creates that little stir of demand. While they're not too scarce, you're not going to easily find them, and they'll cost you a couple bucks.
Yep.
And you're not going to easily find them in high grade. They scratched, they chipped, and it is a great set overall. They did have there's a couple of other great players in that set. Charles Woodson, rookie card, you can find in that set as well. Amon Green, Packers all-time leading rushers in that set as well. So those kind of help drive that set, but the Manning and the Moss are definitely in the front of the line for that set. They're just two great cards.
Yep. Moving on to number 43. This card is iconic, especially recently with some of the obviously auction records it's been setting. It's the 2000. I'm going to put it on. I don't own this card, unfortunately, and it probably never will, as most will probably say the same thing. It's the 2000 playoff contenders autograph rookie. So not only are you getting a Tom Brady rookie, you're getting the signature as well. And this is obviously a super high demand, desirable card. It's in that upper echelon. That's where you got really a lot of disposable income, but definitely a card worthy of this list. And whether it gets in on this ballot, guys, I mean, I think it's going to be a shoo-in to get in, whether it's in this voting year or future one. But again, another card that makes news outside the hobby, right? When it's on financial networks, is setting records, and it's become my wife, who doesn't know about cards, has seen that card. So that'll tell you sort of where that card is as far as what pedestal it sets on. It won't be anything unless I win the Powerball. I'll never own it. And, I kind of, do you think, I mean, I know this is your baby and you think this got a shot to get in? I know it's newer compared to some of the other cards we've spoken about tonight. You think this has a shot to get in on the first ballot?
Because the next card is also a Tom Brady card with the 2000 SP Authentic. So I think there's a little bit of potentially splitting some votes there. I don't know if too many people will vote for Tom Brady twice. If they do, then they're probably very heavily biased, right? Compared to all those other cards. I don't see Tom Brady getting 2 of those votes, but definitely these cards are going to get in at some point. If not, if one of them doesn't get on the first class, I don't know if it quite makes that, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's next year or something like that. Because they're both on there because, they just brought the football side of the hobby into another stratosphere. These things were hitting dollar signs that we had just not seen before ever. And, it brought football cards into, just pop culture. If you were a collector of things, all of a sudden you were paying attention to these as the main cards leading that charge. The limited print run of 2000 SP Authentic always created that chase, nice, clean design and everything like that. And then Contenders, the on-card auto really established a chase for going after those things in Contenders where you could get autograph hits on a regular basis, where previous sets, they were a lot more rare and things like that. And you had no idea, but it was only a select group. There was a lot more coming out of Contenders and things like that. And it was just kind of a new phenomenon that took us by, autos weren't that big, I would say, in the 90s for NFL at least. But this one led that way. A limited print run on the Contenders, but they just didn't number them at that time. But and then Tom Brady is Tom Brady, so he's going to carry a whole lot of stuff, right? The hobby, the card, whatever.
Yeah, I would agree with all that. I'm sure Bart will be out campaigning hard for both of these cards to get in, because I know he's such a big Tom Brady fan.
All right, last card. I know this is going to be right up Scott's alley. He mentioned it earlier. Again, this is not in order. It is in order by year, but it's not in order how you guys necessarily feel about them. But you got the 2005 Topps Chrome Aaron Rodgers rookie. Again, what can't you say about Aaron Rodgers, MVP? He's got a ring. A little bristly, but what difference does that make, right? I don't know too many people who wouldn't want to own this card, whether you like Aaron Rodgers or you don't like Aaron Rodgers. You'll take the card. And so, again, another iconic card. The guy's going to be a first ballot Hall of Fame quarterback for the NFL. So this card is definitely worthy of the list. I'll let this is Scott's team, and I'm assuming Scott likes Aaron Rodgers, so I'll let him speak to this card.
Sure. Again, we're talking about Aaron Rodgers, a 4-time MVP of the league. He does hold some all-time records as far as efficiency ratings go, and touchdown to interception ratio, and he holds a lot of those numbers currently. So definitely will be a first ballot Hall of Famer. And this card's interesting because it's Topps Chrome. Of course, football was doing the Topps was doing football at that point, and they did have some really great sets in the early to mid 2000s, football related, all the way. I think last Topps Chrome set was 2014 maybe, or 2015. 2015.
Yeah.
But yeah, this card's actually real tough to find in high grade. There's been a couple thousand of them graded, and only about 200 have gotten the grade of a 10 or 250. I think the number's right around there. So, scratching, chipping, just like any of those Chrome cards.
Centering too on some of the Chrome issues.
Crazy bad on this card. So for those reasons alone, he's one of the more modern players we decided to put on the list.
Yeah, no doubt. Great 45. It's hard to go wrong, but it's going to be tough. If I had to predict a 10, I'm sure I wouldn't get all 10 right, I'm going to obviously vote and see how many of the 10 that I vote for actually make it in. But great list, guys. Kudos to Ray for bringing what he started with baseball to football. Kudos to you two gentlemen for compiling and getting this list. You really, I think you hit it on the head. I'm sure 46 was worthy too, and eventually we'll probably see those cards as some of these cards get in, start to move up and get into next year's ballot. It's going to be interesting to see where the people vote and what 10 get in here in the first class. And the safe bet is all 10 cards are going to be worthy for sure, because we just talked about 45 that we can't argue against. So great job, guys. I'm going to get my vote in. Speaking of that, Ray or whoever else wants to, for those who haven't voted yet, how do you vote? Where do you go? I'll just say the voting is going to be closed the day before the Super Bowl. I believe that's February 11th, and then you'll have your inaugural football card Hall of Fame class of 2023. But how can people get their votes in?
Well, they can go to the Sports Card Hall of Fame network. The link will be there, or they can go to any one channels because we're all going to have the videos up on each one of our channels. So they can go to Sports Card Hall of Fame network. The link for the voting is there, and all of our channels really. So it's going to be easily accessible to get the vote.
And one thing I'll say, I'll put that stuff in the show notes of this podcast. So if you didn't catch it, you just go refer to the show notes, and that'll get you where you need to go to get your votes in, cast your votes, and see how many of your selections make it in. Guys, again, great job. Thank you for sharing some time with the show. I want to give everybody, you all have your own individual channels and shows. Bart, we'll start with you. Plug what you do and where people can find you.
I go by Bart's Cards on YouTube and IG. I collect damn near everything. Obviously, I have a lot of 49ers and Jerry Rice stuff, as I mentioned, but Hall of Famers across sports and just iconic cards and things like that. So my eye is always wandering to the next thing. But you can find me there, and I'll have plenty of Sports Card Hall of Fame Network voting and links and stuff plugged for you to vote.
Scott, go ahead. I'll have you go next. Plug whatever you want.
Sure. Well, my channel, of course, is Scotty Tradition. I collect, first and foremost, a lot of Wisconsin teams. So whether it be Packers or Bucks or Brewers, and that, so basically all the sports. I am on the PSA set registry as well. So I work on the top 250 cards in the hobby set. So that kind of gets me into lots of different sports and iconic cards in all the sports, which is a lot of fun. And then also collect vintage Green Bay Packers all the way to current. So cool part about collecting the Packers is they started in 1919. So you can collect stuff from 100 years back if you want to. And, I do work on set registries quite a bit. So just look for cards in nice condition that I can collect. So if you want to check out my channel, Scotty Tradition is where you need to be.
There you go. Ray, I'll have you kind of close it out with your stuff. And again, if you want to, one last kind of direct people where to get their votes in.
Yeah, well, my channel is Ray from Philly, all one word. I collect a lot of baseball cards. I'm in all the PSA set registries myself, the 300 great baseball cards, the 20th Century by Mike Payne, so post-war rookie Hall of Fame. And this has been a lot of fun. So, yeah, I hope everyone checks out the voting and checks out these guys' channels as well, Bart's Cards and Scotty Tradition. And a big kudos shout out to the other guys that are helping in Sports Card Hall of Fame, Mike, this baseball card life, and Victor, the rookie card specialist. The five of us are running the Sports Card Hall of Fame network. So, look out soon. There's going to be content continually on that network, and hope you have fun with voting on this. It's going to be a blast. It's a nice, big success, first year ballot.
Yeah, and I'll close with this. I know when I had Ray on the show and we talked about the Baseball Card Hall of Fame, I mentioned to him I'd like to see even the national maybe do something, have some of these cards kind of embrace this, maybe have a display with, even if it's just that year's class. These are this year's card Hall of Fame class, and when baseball, now football, there it would be a nice touch. I think I'd like to see that, and maybe at some point we will. So great job by all involved. Not it's a lot of work, right? Look, no one's did it before you guys did it, right? There's probably a reason for that. It's not necessarily an easy task, right? And so, but here you are. So I appreciate you guys, and I appreciate you making some time tonight to kind of talk about it. I'm gonna one last politic. Ernie Davis rookie, Mean Joe Green next year, and we'll do it again. And you guys are welcome if you want to do this. To promote this each year. My door is obviously open as far as I'm concerned. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, John. Thanks, guys.